when they do this all over again, the defense is going to have a huge advantage because they know that they've already gotten a jury to acquit her on murder. If they have to do it again, they will. But now they know that the weakness is the manslaughter charge. And that means that there was, some people on that jury, depending on who we ask, it's a different number every time. But there were some people on that jury who thought that John O'Keefe was hit by a car, because you can't vote guilty on manslaughter if he's not hit by a car. And so now they know, forget all the conspiracy shit, just focus on proving the physical impossibility that John O'Keefe was hit by a car. Really, really, and let the jury know that these crash daddy experts, that they are not just hired guns. Hopefully this time, when Auntie Bev tries once again to say you can't mention the FBI investigation, hopefully they fight back on that. They appeal it, they bring it to the SJC, something like that, because it seems like it should be allowed to be mentioned.
So here is the local news. This came out this morning out of Dedham, Massachusetts. The Karen Reed murder case will return to court this Friday, tomorrow, as Judge Beverly Canone is expected to hear arguments on a motion to dismiss 2 charges that have been called into question after the high drama trial ended with a hung jury. Did you see this coming? Did you expect a hung jury?
No, not at all. I mean, the longer it went on, the more realistic possibility it became, but I didn't see this. I thought this would be done within a day. I'm like, because how can anyone, after sitting through 10 weeks of that nonsense, possibly think that there is guilt beyond a reasonable doubt here? I mean, come on. Even if you're like up in the air on this one, you're like, I don't know. You can't be 100% positive that she did it. Like, you can't feel that comfortable sending a woman to prison for the rest of her life. I mean, that's a lot. That's a heavy burden to live with. Any normal non-sociopath would have a tough time sleeping with that. And so I just couldn't believe when they came back hung. I'm like, I figured it was one person holding them up, but as it turns out, it was something very different than what I initially thought. So in the coming weeks, and this is what tomorrow's hearing is largely about. In the coming weeks, there was, a total now, I believe, of 5 jurors who have come forward and reached out to the defense and told them that we voted 12-0 to acquit Karen Reed of murder and the 3rd charge of leaving a scene of a crime causing injury or something like that. And we were 12-0 on that, but we were deadlocked, they said, on manslaughter. And I believe they said the count was at like 6-6. And then some bullying took place, some, push it, come on, she's guilty. And then they got it up to like 8-4 or 9-3, depending on which juror you hear say this. It's an unofficial vote, so they don't know for sure what it was. It wasn't like official. So but there's clearly they weren't going to reach a verdict on manslaughter. Now, what they could have done and what they should have done is acquitted her, said we have a verdict on the 1st and 3rd charge, murder and leaving the scene of an accident. But they didn't know that they could do that. Instead, they said we can't come to a decision because they were under the impression, because the jury instructions were so unclear from the judge and the form that they filled out was so unclear, that they didn't know that they had the option of acquitting on 2 charges and, hanging on a 3rd charge. And so that's why they've come forward, these people. And the Commonwealth, for the first few weeks after the trial, said, no, this never happened. I don't know. They're making this shit up. This can't be real. And now, as it turns out, last week, the Commonwealth put out a motion in which they admit that they have been contacted by 4 of these people who told them the exact same story. And so how could any decent, ethical, moral person sleep at night knowing that, like, oh yeah, this jury that sat through 10 weeks of this shit, they intended to acquit her of this. We cannot try her in good faith again. We can't do it because it's just immoral. Like, if she was convicted after these people, I mean, the appeals would be, heard instantaneously. So why bother? But these people are zombies, as my attorney Mark Betterow calls them. They're zombies. They have no souls. Their only thing they're interested in is the win, the conviction. Like, that's all that matters to these people. They don't care if you get actual justice out of this. They just want to get the W. And they're sick people.
Wow. What were the three charges were? It was leaving the scene of the crime, manslaughter, and
Murder too, second degree murder.
how is murder 2 different than regular murder?
I think you have to want murder 1 is like you plan to do it, like you have a whole thing and you go and do it, whereas like murder 2 is like just heat of the moment. I think that's how it works, but I'm not entirely sure.
Jeez. Okay. Yeah, like you said, five jurors came forward. That means what? It's all said and done, and then people start to feel guilty, and they talk and they go, "Oh, we should really say something."
Well, yeah, and it's like not only do they feel guilty and bad for Karen Read, but they're also like, if you were on that jury and you gave up 10 weeks of your life sitting in there, that sucked. I mean, there was some really boring moments in that trial where I just looked at the jurors and I'm like, bro, I feel so bad for those guys. I'd be falling asleep listening to this shit. And the swamp ass, like, can we just talk about the swamp ass for a minute? That's a lot of sitting down in a chair all day. I would leave the courthouse feeling gross as shit. Like sometimes I'd be like, I felt better after like working out sometimes. Like I would leave that courthouse feeling nasty. And I could imagine how these jurors felt, and they did it every day for 10 weeks. And then they don't even get credit for it. It's like you didn't even do anything. You ended with a hung jury. You don't even get credit for all the work you did. So if I was a juror, that's why I would be coming forward like, what the fuck? I gave up 10 weeks of my life for this shit. I don't even get any credit. You're just going to do it all over again. The fuck was the point of that?
Jeez. Okay. And then it says Reed's defense team states it received unsolicited communications from the jurors who deliberated in her first trial, indicating in no uncertain terms the jury had a firm 12-0 agreement that Ms. Reed was not guilty of 2 of the 3 charges, including murder in the second degree. The filing also stated that the jury unanimously believed Reed was not guilty of count 3, which was leaving the scene of the crime. And here is they've got a copy of the
it's the motion
to dismiss.
Yeah.
If you guys want to read it for fun, I'm sure it's many pages.
Yeah, it's just basically outlines the fact that they've been reached out to by a number of jurors, and that they should dismiss it for that reason.
The jury was only unable to agree on the manslaughter charge that Reed also faces in connection with O'Keefe's death in Canton of January of 22. Cannoni, I keep wanting to say cannoli, declared a mistrial after the jury sent her a note indicating they were at an impasse and future deliberations would be futile. It was the third note that the jury sent, saying they could not reach a unanimous decision during the 5 days. How did this happen, though? It just seems so obvious to me. But
yeah, I mean, I think about in order to believe that Karen Read was guilty of manslaughter, you have to believe that John was hit by that car, which means that you have to believe that the Crash Daddy guys are paid liars, that the plow driver who swore and insisted that there was no body on the lawn at 2:30 is just wrong or blind or lying. You would have to believe that all 10 people who came out of that house and left that night didn't see John's body lying on that front lawn. That like you would have to believe all that nobody in that house heard a car crash. Nobody saw anything, that the Canton Police Department didn't find any pieces of taillight at 7 a.m. when they searched the scene, but it was really there. They just missed it all. I mean, the things that you would have to believe to actually be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Read committed manslaughter is just mind-boggling. Like I've kind of lost. It's just like now you realize, like, man, juries we got a problem with juries. It's just like, how could anyone be that stupid? Like, I just don't get it.
And you also mentioned there was a guy inside who nobody thought to wake him up while this was all happening.
Yeah, Brian Albert.
That's insane. If there was like a commotion going on outside your house and like it involved somebody's death, like everyone in that house, unless you're like a kid or a baby, everyone in that house is going to be awake, being like, "What the fuck's going on?" So
yeah, I mean, it's like, so you have to believe, if you were a juror and that you believe the manslaughter charge was, legitimate and she was guilty of that beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to believe that Brian Albert's story about sleeping through all this is legitimate. Like, and it's like, but come on, I can't believe that people are this stupid. Like, I really can't. I mean, I think horrible liars. Maybe that's just because I know they're lying when I went into it, but apparently people on this jury, some of them were convinced that they were telling the truth. And but like I said, it can't get any easier for the Commonwealth this time around. It can only get harder. Like since this has happened, Michael Proctor, the lead investigator, has been suspended without pay the day after the trial ended. His two immediate supervisors, Bukaki and Tully, they have also been put under internal affairs investigation. So like that's a cloud hanging over your head for the round two. Like it's going to make it impossible for the lead detective, Michael Proctor, to testify at the next one. They know the defense has the advantage of knowing that, this didn't work. Like the manslaughter thing, we didn't convince them of that. So we need to focus on proving that that he wasn't hit by a car. And I mean, it's just like, it's not going to, and they're only doing this. Number one, they want the W. I still don't know to this day if they actually think they're going to get a win, or like, because they're really stupid if they think that, or what I think they're doing is they're just trying to appease the O'Keefe family and like make it seem to them like, oh yeah, we're going to keep trying. And then when she gets acquitted, they're going to be like, oh, she's OJ. Like they're already calling her like the East Coast OJ. Like that's the plan here is, oh, she got away with it because she had a high priced fancy attorney. And then this blogger shows up and he starts influencing the jury and intimidating. That's the plan.
Do you think that any of these jurors could have been compromised in any way? Because it does seem like common sense that she is not guilty, but
I don't think so. I do know as a fact, according to one of the affidavits, that one of the jurors who was a not guilty on manslaughter, he changed his vote to he was one of the people. It was 6-6 and then later like 8-4 or 9-3. He was one of the people that changed his vote to guilty, and he said that he was intimidated by Brian Albert. This is in an affidavit. So Brian Albert showed up on the final day of deliberations and sat with the O'Keefe family and just stared at the jury, at them, like taking mental notes of what they look like. And you're just like that motherfucker, like he's icy. He's an icy motherfucker. Like you're like, that guy, he scares me. Like he's one of those guys, like he's big, and he's just the fact that he's been a cop for 30 years and has connections, knows how to get rid of shit. You're like, that's a guy I would have messed with.
Right. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
The defense has since filed 3 memorandums in support of dismissing the 2 charges, with the most recent coming on Monday. The memo stated that the jury had determined that even if Reed hit O'Keefe with her Lexus SUV, she did not realize that she did. Reed's legal team hopes to keep their client from being tried again on the same charges. The defense respectfully renews its contention that the jury acquitted Ms. Reed on counts 1 and 3, or alternatively, there was no manifest necessity for a mistrial as those counts. Therefore, double jeopardy, Reed's legal team stated. Double jeopardy is what? When you get tried for the same thing twice?
Yeah, after you were acquitted.
Prosecutors.
Sorry. It's not like an official. I mean, that's the gray area here. It's like it's never happened before. It's not technically an official conviction because they didn't check the box. They didn't say. But they also didn't, there was a miscommunication. They didn't even know that was an option to acquit on one of the 3. And either way, like if the just thing to do would be to bring the jury back and just poll them and say, was it your intention to vote guilty or not guilty on the murder count? Poll all 12 of them. And if all 12 of them say, yeah, then it's not guilty. Then it's an acquittal. Then you can't go forward anymore. You have to drop the charges. But again, that's what you would do. That's what the Commonwealth would do. That's what the judge would do if they were actually interested in true justice, which they've proven time and time again that they're not really interested in that.
Wow. Prosecutors in the murder case previously filed documents in opposition to the defense's post-trial motions to dismiss Reed's criminal charges, calling the claims made by Reed's attorneys unsubstantiated and sensational.
Yeah, they're so sensational. First of all, they're pretty substantiated. They are sensational. I'll give them that. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word, but like this whole thing is sensational. But it's like it's not our fault that you guys literally created a Lifetime movie script out of like a real life murder case. Like I didn't create that. You guys created the sensationalism. We reacted to it.
Right. Defense attorney said in a follow-up filing that the retrial of Reed should not be allowed, calling the state's continued push for a conviction in the death of O'Keefe grossly unfair. Kearney then indefinitely extended an order impounding the jury list from Reed's trial, citing one juror's credible and reasonable fear for their safety.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, actually, that was bullshit. So that whole thing, so one juror wrote a affidavit in which he said that he wants to have the names of the jury impounded because of fear of me. Like he said, he basically alluded that the whole thing was me, that I've threatened to say the names of jurors if they become public, to expose them and write about them. And he's going to be in fear and he's going to be beat up because I found out that the jury foreman, who was one of the guilty voters on manslaughter, is a former cop. And he's now a physician's assistant in Boston. And he's the one, I know as a fact, he's the one that wrote that affidavit. Okay. And wow. I know his name. Like, bro, I know your name, dude. I haven't said it. I could say it. Nothing is stopping me from saying it. Like, the fact that it's impounded hasn't changed the fact that I looked on your LinkedIn, right? That I looked on your Facebook, that I sent you a Facebook message that you still haven't read yet. Okay. It's like, but like, I can't, like, I don't know what you think the point of this subpoena. I'm not a bad guy. I'm not trying to hurt anyone here. I don't want to, if the guy doesn't want his name out, then I won't say it. Okay. But this idea that I'm like this big bad intimidator and I'm so scary and I'm going to hurt you, it's just it's nonsense. I didn't kill anyone. They did. You know, you should be much more scared of Brian Albert, who came there and stared you down and got your punk ass to vote guilty on manslaughter because you were scared of him. Admit it.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah. So this is the new thing. So Lieutenant John Fanning is a homicide detective in the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. He is one of Michael Proctor's bosses, who was on a text thread with Michael Proctor, in which Michael Proctor was saying, he called Karen Reed, he referred to it as David Yanetti's retarded client, and said he was looking for nudes in her phone. And John Fanning was on that group chat with a bunch of other troopers and didn't reprimand him or say that's inappropriate or anything like that. John Fanning has testified against me at 2 separate grand juries. He has come to my house when I was arrested. He's a good old boy. He's protected by these douchebags. Turns out John Fanning was in charge of jury security. He was in charge of overseeing the jury. And on the final day, there was a woman, I call her juror number 3. She looks like a sassy Pam Beasley kind of. And during the whole trial, she was very alert, very active juror who would show her, had a bad poker face. Like, you could tell what she thought of all the witnesses based upon her facial reactions. And she did not like Michael Proctor at all. She was disgusted by him, and she was disgusted and are just like, thought Trooper Joe Paul, the crash reconstruction guy, when he gave his testimony, she goes, what? Like, she mouthed what? And it was very obvious this woman was a not guilty voter. On the last day, when they're about to do closing arguments, she gets called in. Brian Albert's sitting there in the front row with the O'Keefes and just kind of staring at her. And so she goes over and the judge calls her over and says something to her. And she looks very upset. And 20 minutes later, she gets dismissed as a juror. And she was the most obvious Karen Reed not guilty voter. Anyway, as it turns out, I've found out that John Fanning is in charge of the jury, and that he is the one who reported to a court officer that this woman was allegedly seen on video at a bar a month earlier. Yeah, like they're sitting like that, staring at him, like on the last day. Like our position, like that's what the jurors saw. That was the exact angle that they had. And Jennifer McCabe, Colin Albert, and Brian Albert right there. So this woman gets thrown off the jury, and as it turns out, John Fanning is the reason why, because he reported to a court officer that there's a video on her there of her a month prior at a bar allegedly talking about this case. He doesn't sign an affidavit. This isn't on the record. And there's no video presented to the judge. It's just, and she denies it. And so, but she's eliminated, and she's an obvious Karen Reed not guilty voter. Then there was 14 left. And how they do it in Massachusetts is instead of telling you that you're an alternate, you might not pay attention as much. So they don't tell you who the alternates are. And then after the trial is over, they do a drawing and they eliminate 2, and you're the alternates. And the other 2 women who who were chosen as alternates were the next two most vocal anti not guilty, like or anti guilty.
What are the odds?
Yeah, and the odds are actually 1 in 455 that those exact three. It would be 1 out of 17 times 1 out of 15 times 1 out of 13 would be the odds that those three exact witness 1 out of 15 times 1 out of 14 times 1 out of 13, that those three women would be the three that were chosen as alternates in this. And like those are three obvious not guilty votes, and they were kicked off.
Jeez, this whole thing stinks.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, just when you thought this couldn't get more corrupt, like how did the state police get in charge of a jury in a case in which their office is? This dude was on the witness list. Like these guys were involved in the cover up of the murder and in the investigation of the murder, and they've been accused by the defense of being complicit in this, and they're in charge of the jury, and then they eliminate a juror based solely on their word, who is obvious a not guilty vote in favor of Karen Reid.
American Dreamer here says Bev chose foreman before alternates.
Yeah, that's what they say. I'm not. I maybe I missed that part. But yeah, I guess so.
Wow. Have you been in contact much lately with Karen through all this?
Oh, we've chatted here and there since then. I try, like, there's a definite line that, we try not to cross because simply because they're out to get both of us, and they would love nothing more to be like, she's conspiring to commit witness intimidation. But she's not, like, she used to give me a lot of information, like, about what was going on. Now all the information's out there, so there's not really anything to give me or anything like that. So if I have a question for her team, I can just contact her attorneys and ask them on the record or off the record. It's professional. Like, I try to make this not a friendship thing. It's like it's my job.
Yeah. Gosh. So what is the worst case scenario for Karen here? What do you think's going through her mind?
Well, worst case scenario is life in prison. Like, that's ultimately what is on the table, right? Like, if this goes completely wrong, because a jury can do anything. You don't know what a jury's going to do. You don't know how stupid these people are. Apparently there's some dumb people on this jury. So that's why I felt bad for her that she even had to go through this trial, because even though I never thought she would be convicted, it was, it's got to be anxiety inducing to just wait for, like, to be told, like, there's a verdict, and go back. Like, imagine that, what that's like. It's like, is this my last breath of fresh air? Is this my last whatever? That's got to be anxiety inducing. But because I've been to jail, I know what it's like. It sucks. It's not fun. Women's jail sounds a little more fun, but it's like men's jail is not fun, and so I definitely wouldn't want to go back there. So
plus,
I'm sure
almost no one looks good in orange.
No, they don't. I mean, I looked okay, to be perfectly honest with you. I looked okay, but it's not a flattering color.
Love you guys. Thank you for the chats. Thank you for the comments. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Bye. All right. Love you guys. God, I don't even want to leave. This candle smells so good. I don't want to leave. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye. Love you all. Join the Discord. Feet. Love you all. Wow. You guys are awesome. Love you, get it. Bye, guys. Bye. Now I'm really leaving. Love you. Bye.